Thank you for your presentation. Let's begin with our question and answer session. Dr. Sweedler, there are many skeptics and opponents to the existence of global climate change. What is their main argument, and is there any validity to it?
Within the atmospheric and climate science community of scientists, there is overwhelming consensus, in fact more than 97%, that the Earth is warming, that the rate of this warming over the past 100 years is unprecedented, that the level of the sea is rising, that the polar ice cap is melting, and that the oceans have become more acidic. Now, all of these facts are based on actual measurements taken around the globe by hundreds of scientists over many, many years. Those who do not think that global warming is taking place generally are not climate scientists, or if they are other scientists or non-scientists, they simply do not accept that the measurements are valid, or they do not accept the methods of science. The most commonly heard arguments from the so-called skeptics are: one, the sun is heating up and that has increased global warming; two, the orientation of the Earth has changed; or three, that somehow the greenhouse effect is not valid. In response, all data show that there has not been any increase in the sun's output over the last 100 years, that the Earth's orientation changes but over periods of 100,000 years, and the physics of the greenhouse effect has been demonstrating and well known since the mid-19th century. A more valid critique is that the observed warming is not caused by human activities, especially the combustion of fossil fuels. This argument might have had some weak validity 30 or 40 years ago, but by measuring carbon isotopes in the atmosphere, it is now conclusively known that the CO2 in the atmosphere comes from the combustion of fossil fuels and not from volcanoes or other natural causes. One can systematically go through all the possible sources of carbon in the atmosphere, and the only way to explain the measured levels is from the increase in human activity, especially the burning of fossil fuels.
Dr. Israel, it was interesting how you explained the area of enlightenment was a two-edged sword, bringing forth a new sense of personal responsibility. Can you elaborate?
Yes. Well, the Enlightenment was the preeminent historical era that encouraged people for the first time ever to openly question traditional institutions and morals based on a rational approach to knowledge and to decision-making. But as I explained in my presentation, somewhere along the Enlightenment path, we abandoned our responsibility to the inner self, to others, and to the earth.
Thank you. Dr. Sweedler, do you think it is good policy for governments around the world to mandate minimum clean energy generation goals to power companies and utilities, even if the per kilowatt cost remains high today and in the foreseeable future?
Yes, I think it is good policy, but that's assuming that the price differential is not very large. The reason is that clean energy generation addresses public health and security issues as well as climate change issues. Clean energy generation, wind, solar, storage, hydro, geothermal, are all cutting-edge technologies requiring advances in science and engineering and higher education degrees, which lead to better jobs. Conventional energy sources, especially coal, are older technologies and are not at the cutting edge of energy technologies today.
Thank you. Dr. Israel, what organizational structures or frameworks continually reinforce our habits of mind and consciousness today?
Well, for sure, the industrial rational model, ethical egoism, and utilitarianism are three endemic organizational structures that frame how we see the world today. These structures push us away from the moral basis of values and the good, particularly our responsibility to our planet.
Thank you. Dr. Sweedler, in your view, do hydroelectric and nuclear power generation qualify as green energy sources or clean energy sources? Is there a difference between these two concepts?
Hydropower should count as clean energy generation, especially in the context of climate change. But there still may be damage to rivers by large dams. Nevertheless, that is different from climate change impacts. And I don't really see a difference in substance between green or clean energy sources. I prefer clean energy language, as green energy doesn't really describe anything specific, while clean energy is clean relative to other sources, such as coal or oil. Now, with respect to nuclear power does have a role to play in reducing carbon emissions. However, one has to keep in mind there are many other issues that need to be addressed technologically, such as nuclear waste disposal, thermal pollution, and capital costs.
Thank you. One last question. Dr. Israel, what are the other ways we know or perceive beyond the positivistic, technical, rational model?
That's a great question. Well, we know through our intuition, we know through our senses, and our sense experience. And we also know in a very subtle way through mindfulness, through meditation, and through prayer. I encourage you all to use these powerful resources that we all have in our professional and personal lives.